King Solomon is remembered as one of the richest and wisest rulers in history. He built a magnificent temple. He lived in a beautiful palace. Gold filled his kingdom, foreign rulers respected him, and merchants traveled from distant lands to trade with him. But behind all that wealth was a serious financial problem. Solomon had received valuable materials, workers, and support from another powerful ruler. In return, he owed that ruler a great deal. Yet Solomon did not repay everything with gold or silver. Instead, he found another way. He used land, diplomacy, taxes, labor, and trade to deal with the obligation. It was a clever plan. It protected his treasury and helped his kingdom continue to grow. But the debt did not simply disappear. Someone still had to pay the price. And the true cost of Solomon's decision would not become clear until years later. Number Solomon inherits a powerful kingdom. Solomon was the son of King David. When David died, Solomon became king of Israel. He inherited a strong kingdom, but ruling it was not easy. Solomon had to protect the nation, manage its people, maintain peace, and complete the plans his father had started. One of those plans was greater than all the others. Solomon wanted to build a temple for God in Jerusalem. This temple would become the spiritual center of Israel. It would also show the power, wealth, and importance of Solomon's kingdom. But building such a structure required more than a dream. It required wood, stone, metal, skilled workers, transportation, food, money, and many years of labor. Israel had workers and stone, but it did not have enough of the finest timber needed for the project. For that, Solomon needed help from another king. Number the agreement with King Hiram. North of Israel was the wealthy city of Tyre. Its ruler was King Hiram. Hiram had been a friend of Solomon's father, David. He controlled valuable cedar forests and had access to skilled builders, sailors, and craftsmen. Solomon sent a message to Hiram. He explained that he planned to build a temple and asked Hiram to provide cedarwood and experienced workers. Hiram agreed. His workers would cut trees from the mountains. The timber would then be transported by sea and delivered to Solomon. But this help was not free. In return, Solomon promised to provide food for Hiram's royal household. Every year, large amounts of grain and olive oil were sent from Israel to Tyre. At first, this looked like a fair agreement. Hiram had timber and skilled workers. Solomon had fertile land and agricultural products. Both kings received something they needed. However, Solomon's building plans continued to grow. And so did the cost. Projects become more expensive. The temple took 7 years to build. It was covered with valuable materials and decorated with great care. But Solomon did not stop after completing the temple. He also built a huge royal palace. He constructed government buildings, defensive walls, storage cities, military centers, and homes for members of his household. Solomon spent 13 years building his own palace complex. His construction program continued for decades. Thousands of workers were needed. Some cut stone, some carried materials, some worked in forests, others built roads, walls, cities, and royal buildings. The kingdom began to look more powerful than ever. But power came with a price. The more Solomon built, the more resources he needed. The more resources he received from Hiram, the greater his obligation became. Solomon may have been king, but even a king could not ignore the cost forever. Remember why Solomon could not simply pay in gold. Today, Solomon is remembered for his incredible wealth. But his riches did not appear overnight. Much of his wealth later came from taxes, trade, gifts, alliances, and international business. During the early years of construction, however, he depended heavily on Hiram. Hiram had given him timber, gold, workers, and support. Paying the full amount with gold could have weakened Solomon's treasury. It could have limited his ability to defend the kingdom, continue construction, or expand trade. But refusing to repay Hiram would also be dangerous. Tyre was an important ally. Hiram controlled ships, sailors, craftsmen, and trade routes that Solomon needed. Solomon could not afford to lose the friendship. He needed a solution that would satisfy Hiram without emptying the royal treasury. So Solomon offered something other than money. He offered land. Solomon gives Hiram 20 towns. After Solomon completed the temple and the royal palace, he gave King Hiram 20 towns in the region of Galilee. This was an unusual payment. Instead of giving Hiram a large amount of gold, Solomon gave him control of territory. These towns were meant to repay Hiram for the timber, gold, labor, and support he had provided. From Solomon's point of view, the plan made sense. He could keep more gold in his treasury. He could preserve his military and construction funds. He could also maintain his relationship with Hiram. The debt had not been paid with money. It had been turned into a land agreement. Solomon had replaced a financial obligation with a political one. It was clever. But there was a problem. Hiram did not like the towns. Hiram rejects Solomon's payment. King Hiram traveled to inspect the towns Solomon had given him. What he saw disappointed him. The towns did not appear to have the value he expected. The Bible says Hiram asked Solomon, "What kind of towns are these that you have given me?" Hiram even gave the region a name that showed his dissatisfaction. The exact meaning of that name is debated, but the message was clear. Hiram believed Solomon had given him poor compensation. Imagine Hiram's position. He had supplied valuable cedarwood. He had provided craftsmen and building materials. He had also given Solomon gold. In return, he received towns that he did not consider useful or valuable enough. Solomon's solution seemed to have failed. He had not paid the full obligation in gold, but he had also not pleased the man he owed. This could have damaged their alliance. It could have created a conflict between Israel and Tyre. But instead of allowing the disagreement to destroy their relationship, Solomon and Hiram continued working together. That decision changed everything. Solomon turns debt into business. Solomon understood that the best way to deal with a financial problem was not always to make one large payment. Sometimes it was better to create a system that produced new wealth. Hiram had something Solomon did not have. He had skilled sailors and experience in international sea trade. Solomon had access to land, workers, natural resources, and important trade routes. Together, the two kings created a powerful business partnership. Hiram provided sailors who knew how to travel across dangerous waters. Solomon provided ships, ports, workers, and royal support. Their fleets sailed to distant lands and returned with gold, silver, precious stones, rare animals, and valuable goods. Through this partnership, Solomon gained access to wealth far beyond the borders of Israel. Instead of ending his relationship with Hiram after the disagreement over the towns, Solomon made the relationship more valuable. The obligation was absorbed into a larger system of trade and cooperation. Solomon did not simply hand over all the gold he owed. He helped create opportunities that could benefit both kingdoms. This is how he appeared to escape the debt. He changed the form of the agreement. But the wealth of a king always comes from somewhere. And much of Solomon's wealth came from the labor and taxes of his people. Where the people paid the hidden price. Solomon's buildings were magnificent. His throne was impressive. His palace was filled with valuable objects. Foreign rulers were amazed by what they saw. But ordinary people experienced Solomon's kingdom differently. The great construction projects required thousands of workers. Men were sent away from their homes to cut wood, carry stone, build cities, and complete royal projects. The kingdom was also divided into administrative districts. Each district was responsible for supplying food to the royal household for part of the year. Solomon's palace had many officials, servants, soldiers, guests, horses, and workers. Feeding them required enormous amounts of grain, meat, and other supplies. These resources did not appear by magic. They came from farmers, workers, families, and local communities. Solomon protected the royal treasury, but he increased the burden on the kingdom. In other words, he may not have personally paid the entire debt, but the people helped carry its cost. The payment was hidden inside taxes, food supplies, forced labor, and government demands. Solomon escaped one kind of debt by spreading the burden across the nation. Wisdom or manipulation. Was Solomon's decision wise? From a political point of view, it was impressive. He protected the treasury. He kept his alliance with Hiram. He gained access to international trade. He completed the temple and other major projects. He increased Israel's influence. He also created new sources of income instead of depending only on the wealth already available. These were intelligent decisions. But wisdom is not only about making a kingdom richer. It is also about understanding how decisions affect ordinary people. Solomon's system placed heavy pressure on the nation. The king enjoyed gold, palaces, ships, and international respect. The people provided labor, food, and taxes. The kingdom looked rich from the outside, but inside, frustration was growing. This raises an important question. Did Solomon truly escape the debt? Or did he simply make other people pay it? The debt returns after Solomon's death. For many years, Solomon's system continued to work. His authority kept the kingdom together. His alliances protected trade. His government collected taxes and organized labor. But a system built on heavy pressure can become dangerous. After Solomon died, his son Rehoboam became king. The people came to the new ruler with a request. They told him that Solomon had made their burden heavy. They asked Rehoboam to reduce the harsh labor and demands placed upon them. This was his chance to repair the damage. Older advisors told Rehoboam to listen to the people. They said that kindness would earn their loyalty. But Rehoboam rejected their advice. He listened to younger advisors who told him to appear stronger than his father. Rehoboam announced that he would make the people's burden even heavier. That decision caused a national disaster. Most of the tribes rejected him. The kingdom divided into two parts. The united nation Solomon had inherited from David was broken. The wealth, buildings, and alliances could not keep it together. The cost that Solomon had delayed finally returned. It did not return as a bill written on paper. It returned as anger, rebellion, and division. The real meaning of Solomon's debt. Debt does not always look like borrowed money. Sometimes debt is paid with land. Sometimes it is paid through political favors. Sometimes it is paid through taxes, labor, resources, or future agreements. Solomon did not make his obligation disappear. He changed its form. He gave towns instead of gold. He expanded trade instead of making one simple payment. He collected resources from the kingdom instead of carrying the full cost himself. For a time, the strategy worked. Solomon became wealthier. His kingdom became more famous. His projects were completed. But the burden remained. It was carried by farmers, laborers, families, towns, and eventually Solomon's own son. This is the difference between escaping a payment and removing a debt. A payment can be delayed. A cost can be transferred. An agreement can be changed. But someone must still carry the burden. For conclusion, King Solomon did not escape debt through magic. He did not discover a secret treasure. And he did not simply refuse to pay. He used territory, diplomacy, trade, taxes, and labor. He turned a direct financial obligation into a much larger political and economic system. The plan protected his treasury. It preserved his alliance with Hiram. It opened new trade routes and brought great wealth into the kingdom. From the outside, Solomon appeared to have solved the problem. But inside the kingdom, the people were paying the price. They paid through their work. They paid through their crops. They paid through their taxes. And after Solomon died, the nation paid through division. Solomon escaped the immediate payment. But his kingdom could not escape the consequences.